Kanangyo Kanze Namu Butsuyo Butsu Uen Yo Butsu Uen Popo So En Jo Raku Gajo Shonen Kanze An Bonen Kanze An Nen Nen Jushin Ki Nen Nen Furishin Kanze An Namu Butsu Yo Butsu Uen Yo Butsu Uen Bobo So En Jo Raku Gajo Shonen Kanze An Bonen Kanze An Nen Nen Jushin Ki Nen Nen Furishin Kanze An Namu Butsu Yo Butsu Uen Yo Butsu Uen Bobo So En Jo Raku Gajo Shonen Kanze An Bonen Kanze An Nen Nen Jushin Ki Nen Nen Furishin Absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light. Recall this in the dark. Recall this moment after moment. The true heart arises time after time. There is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light. Recall this in the dark. Recall this moment after moment. The true heart arises time after time. There is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light. Recall this in the dark. Recall this moment after moment. The true heart arises time after time. There is nothing but this. Infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind. All that is and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We offer this sincere and devoted practice for the many beings of the 6 worlds and dedicated and grateful thanks to the strength and sound practice of the great Heartland Sangha and its teachers. May our virtuous actions be clear from all interferences, and may our vows be fully realized. We especially dedicate these merits to Sarah Tinkakir at the time of her death, Soke, Dave Moore, Debbie, as well as those names we hold in the silence of our hearts and those names we now voice aloud. May we live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma, and may we realize the Buddha way together. All wisdom beyond wisdom, Mahaprajna Paramita. Prepare for Zazen. Front rows, at the sound of the clappers, turn to your right. Second rows, turn to your left. We will now recite the Sangha Covenant, which is in the liturgy book on the top of page 8. We, the Daishin Kokuji Sangha, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the wisdom and compassion we seek to cultivate by practice, and with deep gratitude for the teachers of this lineage and our connection to one another, covenant to support each other by upholding the precepts of doing no harm, practicing good, and actualizing good for others.
Please have a seat.
Thank you. Also be using the liturgy books for the Gata on opening the sutra and the Bodhisattva vows. So if there isn't one under your cushion, check the cushion next to you if you need it. Gata on opening the sutra. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Gata's true meaning.
So, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here to practice. It's a kind of a common thing at this time in the summer when certainly not all of us are in a situation to be able to travel. Many of us are not. but some do. And this is kind of right in that moment. Ango has concluded. There's a little bit of a space before the teaching retreat, and then the Jakai, which then flings us right into the fall, right? And so back to the fall Ango. So this is a little bit of a lull time. But it's important to appreciate and enjoy and now know how to practice the lull. So today we'll look at the Blue Cliff Record, Heikigan Roku, case 54. Yunmen extends both hands. There's a pointer I'll read. Having penetrated through and out of birth and death, he sets his devices in motion. Perfectly at ease, he shears through iron and cuts through nails. Wherever he goes, he covers heaven and covers earth. But say, whose behavior is this? To test, I'll cite this old case. Check it out. The main case. Yunmen, Master Yunmen, asked a monk, "Where did you come from?" The monk said, "Sichuan." Yunmen then said, "What words and phrases are there at Sichuan these days?" The monk extended both hands. Yunmen, of course, slapped him at once. The monk said, "Hey, I'm still talking." Yunmen then extended both his hands. The monk was speechless, so, of course, Yunmen hit him. Let's see. The verse. At once he takes the tiger's head and the tiger's tail. His stern majesty extends everywhere. I ask back, didn't you know how dangerous it was? Sui Tao says, I've left it off. So this is an example of Old Master Yunmen, who's clearly an adept. And the context maybe is transparent enough, but the monk is coming back, probably returning from a pilgrimage to a different place of training and practice, Sichuan, right? So the monk arrives and Yunmen says, "So, where did you come here from?" And as I often have the occasion to say with these kinds of koans, you know, when you're in a setting like that and interacting with the teacher, it's at once perhaps a very casual conversation, and depending, it can also be a moment of awakening or teaching or befuddlement or whatever else. So in this case, he asks a pretty innocuous question, "Where'd you come from?" And the monk said, "From Sichuan," which is a place. So you could imagine, you know, someone walks into the temple that we haven't seen, and they're wearing a raksu, let's say, and so I say, "Oh, where have you come from?" And they say, "Oh, I'm from Toronto or Kentucky or wherever they're from." That'd be kind of the response. And then further, Yunmen says, "Well, what words and phrases are there at Sichuan these days?" In other words, what's the Dharma like in that place? Say the practitioner said, "Oh, I've come from XYZ Zen Center." Oh, I see. So tell me, what's the Dharma like there these days? Specifically, he says, what words and phrases are there at his shan these days? Now at this, the monk extended both hands. Extended both hands. The teacher asks what words and phrases are being used there, and the monk extends both hands. Now we don't really have like there's lots of ways that could look, right? I mean, it could be like that. It could be. It could be. Don't ask like that. That's you know, that says something very different from this, or it could be. it like that. I mean, they all communicate something quite, it's a different communication each time, right? So we don't really know. I mean, I have some sense of it, reading between the lines and whatnot. But what we know for sure is both hands were extended in response to this question. So I'll just say that clearly there's something going on with this monk. There's, the first exchange, maybe not. So old Yunmen grandmotherly gives another softball, and something else comes back now, something else indeed. Right? However, the response right away is a smack. Now, I really don't think this is Mike Tyson level smack, by the way, just to say it. It's something like that, That's the way I think of it anyway, because I really don't want to hit anybody, and I don't want you hitting me. But it's something like this. The monk, in response to this kind of dismissal, you could say, or is it an acknowledgement? Is it praise? Is it, what is this to begin with, and what's this sort of smack in return? Well, the monk says, hey, I'm still talking. Like, hey, I'm walking here. I have something yet to say. I'm not done. Probably I'm not done. I don't know, but I can suspect this monk had a little flash of something going on. They got their gumption in hand, and they flashed a little whatever they had there, and the abbot's like, and the monk's like, hey, I'm not done. Don't ring that bell. You know that feeling? What? Ding, 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 no. That thing. For those who don't know the reference, when you're in Doksan with the teacher, when that bell rings, it's like it's done. The next person's coming and the interview's over. And part of the skill of that is necessary. It'd be very difficult to have a Doksan level exchange outside of the formal setting, like, at Starbucks or something, because there's not the setting, there's not the intensity, and there's not the kind of guardrails for the exchange. It's necessary that the teacher is able to, we're done. And that we're done can mean all kinds of different things. It can mean all kinds of different things. Anyway, in this case, the monk says, hey, I'm still talking. And then Yunmen extends his two hands. Now, we can expect that it's probably the same gesture that the monk first brought out and thought he was going to really, kill it with this move he's gotten, I mean, another answer could be this could be playing in the same key as Master Gyutai's finger. You know that one? Master Gyutai, in a different case, used to always, to any question, what is the nature of reality, or what the hell is this, or any question, this is what the response would be. What do I do? It's so terrible. I don't know what to. That was his response. And so the other teacher goes and is visiting and asks the attendant, oh, what is the Dharma here? And the little attendant puts his finger up. And it's a somewhat regrettable story, but then the teacher cuts his finger off. And the kid screams in pain and starts to run away, and then the teacher calls back, hey, boy, and he turns, and the teacher holds up his finger. And at least to wrap it up somewhat nicely, the story says, and then a great awakening occurred for the young lad, so hopefully so. But maybe it's that. I mean, that could be. Maybe there's this, I don't know, the teacher's got this thing going where he thinks that's the way to go, and so the monk is aping it. That could be. And maybe old man Yunmen knows that's the deal, so he won't take it. There's all kinds of, all kinds of ways to play the tune. Anyway, he says, I'm still talking. I'm not done yet. Wait a minute. And then Yunmen looks at him right away and goes, boom, and does the same thing with that gesture. And significantly at this, it says the monk was speechless. The monk had no way to respond to that. Or the speechlessness was the response to that. But either way, old Yunmen took it away, because he again went, So what's going on here? Why is this even something to spend time with? what's happening. I mean, one thing you know for sure is that the teaching is happening. That's for sure. If this exchange has survived that many centuries, it's a standard tune for a reason. There's something about it that's useful, right? Everybody knows how to play that one. There is some important Dharma points in there. Now, recently, we had our first funeral vigil here at the temple, as many of us know. And there are many really revelatory components to that, not in divine revelation, but wow, what a revelation it was, this experience. And one of the most important moments amongst many, for many of us, was the vigil, wherein the body was here, and for a whole day, 24 hours, whatever it was, between the end of the visitation and before the funeral rites began, the body was here, and two Sangha members were always present, reciting the Diamond Sutra. It's a very powerful practice. And recently, Dosho, Port Roshi, and Tetsugan Sensei were here. They just finished up their retreat that they held down in Tennessee, I think it was. And we had currents, Doan and I had to sit out here and kind of explain to him something of what the funeral was. And it was quite a compelling conversation. It wasn't a sesshin, but it was definitely a retreat. And one of the amazing parts of this was just hearing that Diamond Sutra relentlessly voiced over and over on behalf of the dying and the deceased. Now, one of those sections, I think, might be helpful to the case that we're looking at. So this is a little section of the Diamond Sutra, right? Section 4. It says, "Furthermore, Subhuti, in the practice of generosity, a bodhisattva should be unsupported. They should practice generosity without regard to sight, sound, touch, flavor, smell, or any thought that arises. Subhuti, thus should a bodhisattva practice generosity without being supported by any notion of a sign. Why? When a bodhisattva practices generosity without being supported by any notion of a sign, their merit is beyond conception. Subhuti, what do you think? Can you measure the space extending eastward? No, world-honored one, I cannot. Subhuti, can you measure the space extending towards the south, or the west, or north, or above, or how about below? No, world-honored one, I cannot measure these spaces. Subhuti, so it is with the merit of a bodhisattva who practices generosity without cherishing any notion of a sign. It is beyond measure like space. Subhuti, a bodhisattva should persevere one-pointedly in this." Now, a few keys will unlock this pretty readily. When it says the practice of generosity, that's a stand-in for all the paramitas. We read in our daily liturgy, let me get it right here, thanks and offerings for the devoted practice, invocation of the lineage, right? The devoted practice of generosity, and then moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, wisdom, skillful means, unshakable vow, spiritual powers, and awakened awareness for my benefit. All of those are what we call the paramitas, the essential practices and perfections of the bodhisattva way. So this is really saying that the bodhisattva practices, let us say, patience, or practices joyful effort, pick your one, but practices without any support by any notion of a sign. Now, the sign can be a little confusing, but just switch that to meaning self. So just watch. If I translate it, Subhuti, in the practice of the paramitas, a bodhisattva should be unsupported. They should practice the paramitas without regard to sight, sound, touch, flavor, smell, or any thought that arises in mind. Subhuti, thus should a bodhisattva practice the paramitas without being supported by any notion of a self. unsupported by any notion of a self. It's clearer, yeah. But see, it's that unsupported business that's so important, because you know what, we would really like some support, thank you. Can I get a little support? And the answer is no. The answer actually is no. The Bodhisattva does not practice because of a pat on the head or a payback or a return or positive karma or rebirth in a positive realm or any of this stuff. Absolutely not dependent on that. Not relying on anything, unsupported by anything, unsupported anywhere, not dependent on anything, nothing to be dependent on, not standing about anywhere, not establishing the self anywhere, not carried away by anything, not fixed on anything, not resting on anything, not leaning on anything, not holding on to anything, not abiding in anything, not intent on anything abiding anywhere. Pretty thorough list, right? Not attached to anything, not clinging to anything. Oh, sure, but you've got this temple. Do we? Yes? No? You've got that body. Do you? You've got your relationship, have you? Your career, your marketable set of skills, your identity, your parents. Not settling down anywhere, not making oneself at home anywhere, not seeking a secure base anywhere, not seeking any refuge or security anywhere, not rejoicing in anything, not expecting help from anything, not trusting in anything except the perfection of wisdom, not believing blindly in a single thing. What about refuge in Buddha? What about refuge in Dharma and refuge in Sangha? Refuge is real, and it includes non-clinging. So I wonder that, I wasn't there for that exchange that I can recall in this moment anyway. Oh, I know how to answer this. I've got it figured out. I know what I'll do when I go into the Doksan room and I get asked that irritating question again. I'm going to go like this. It'll be great. He'll love it. And I'll love me more. And I'll get a gold star. And I'll float and light beams will come in through the Doksan room and everyone will love me. And oh, one. Two. For all this talk about non-clinging, there is something that you can depend on. There is something that you can rely on. And Yunmen is showing it impeccably in this. When this arises, that. When that arises, this. What is it? Is it all just like chaos? And like somehow this guy's a Jedi and no one else is or something? What is it? It's a bodhisattva. He's an amazing, incredibly skillful player. And he's wielding this non-clinging freedom to help the monk wake up. Like for real. Because it really comes down to suffering. Suffering is real. It's very, very real. But so is the alleviation of it. So this monk in this story, he came from the other place of training and he brought this with him, thinking it would save him, or that he would impress the abbot, or who knows what. And the abbot took it away. And then the monk's like, hey, I've got more than that. And whether the monk was unable to respond, and so the abbot said, or if the monk was sitting there like defiantly presenting emptiness, which I've seen people try. The abbot took that away too. Oh, you think you're empty and all, okay, yeah. So now what can the monk rely on now? He had a form that got taken. Maybe he had emptiness that got taken. Well, it's up to you to see.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Are there any announcements?
So tomorrow night at 7 p.m., Reverend Owen will be presenting White Tarot practice. We have the teaching retreat coming up in July 12th, the week of July 12th, which is a 5-day non-residential retreat. Registration is, are we registering? The event's on the Facebook page. And then the Jukai retreat is open for registration. If you intend to come, please register so we know the numbers. Thank you.
Please restore the Zendo.